Good morning, everyone. We are Sarah and Christina from One Woman Shop, which is a resource hub and membership community for female solo business owners. I'm Sarah, Christina, other side of me. I'm coming at you from snowy Rochester, New York, and I'm actually rearranging my office right now, so I'm kind of in like this corner with a window, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I feel like I'm running a waiting room right now. But Christina's coming at us from a little different climate.
Yeah, a little bit of Guatemala. Apparently there's a hashtag going around. Hashtag perhaps you need a little bit of Guatemala. It's a pretty long hashtag.
That's a really long. That's half the tweet.
I know, right? I know I was going to do it in front of my beautiful window with like the lush greenery, but then the sun it didn't work.
Oh yeah, that's got to be so rough, so rough.
Yeah, it's a hard life. Sorry. So we were dying laughing because last week we had like the world's most awkward intro where we just like miscommunicated. And so we just sat there and we were rewatching. I just rewatched the recording on YouTube like 10 times. I was like dying. So today I think we've done slightly better at least.
But we should mention that that's likely to happen once in a while, if not too often.
we like to ad-lib it.
Today we are talking about living in an effective multi-passionate life. And I had to look because when we set this up, I think we were saying we would talk about how to live an effective multi-passionate life. But I think we kind of backed up and looked at it as we know a few things and we have thoughts, but we don't know all the tips and tricks for living a multi-passionate life. We just know that we are both multi-passionate. So we're certainly open and we want to hear others' thoughts on how to make this work, especially as a solopreneur, but in general in life as well. Christina, do you want to jump into what we mean when we say multi-passionate though?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry. Look at my hair, Rod. So there are a bunch of different words for multi-passionate. And so we always say multi-passionate, and you'll see it. If you type it in the site, you'll see it appear a bunch, which we're going to talk about a little bit. But other words, Renaissance woman, obviously not Renaissance man. Scanner is another word that's commonly used within this whole multi-passionate world. And then I know you listed /career, so we can talk a little bit about that. But it's basically, it's in the name. It's people who have a lot of different passions. And I would say usually the ultimate goal is to kind of bring all those passions together in your life or in your business, which we're going to talk about as well. How do you have a more streamlined definition, Sarah?
No, I think the name really says it all. Where it's definitely having an interest in multiple things, and going so far as to call them all passions.
Right.
The /careers I actually hadn't heard of until I was at World Domination Summit in July, and I sat on I wouldn't say a panel, it was like a break-off session with Emily from Putty Like, and she talks a lot about multi-passionate careers, and we'll mention that in our resources. But she had everybody just kind of listing out every passion that they're ever interested in, and then teaching them how to build a /career. And then when I was reading Brene Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection over the last couple weeks, fantastic book, she actually mentions a book by Marcy. Her last name begins with an A, and I will butcher it. But it's called One Person / Multiple Careers, a new model for work and life. And so I'm actually really excited to read that and kind of see exactly how she defines a /career. But it's basically saying that I'm not just a copywriter. I'm a copywriter / community organizer / blah, blah, blah. So whatever it is, her example was researcher / storyteller / artist / real estate agent, bringing all of those things together. And of course, our first caveat, we're going to get into this, but it doesn't always have to be career related. But we'll talk a little bit about that. Correct.
Okay, so here's my first question for you. Do you think, I think we both really like this post from Rebecca Tracy, which we'll also put in the show notes, which is why I think multi-passionate is bullshit. And if you actually read the piece, the title's kind of clickbaity, and that she doesn't actually believe that multi-passionate is bullshit, but she goes into why she thinks there's limitations. So I'm curious, for you, do you think that it's important to have this title, or do you think that kind of humans naturally are multi-passionate? Or do you think it's like a special sector of us?
No, see, I think honestly, everybody is multi-passionate in life. Yes, you have some people, it differs when we're talking about careers, because you do have some people that are truly experts in one particular thing, but tell me they're not interested or feel passionate about anything else in life, right, and I will be absolutely amazed. So I think multi-passionate is just kind of the nature of being a human and living in this world. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to business, I do think I think it's a sector of people who really think about it. There's a lot of people might embrace a multi-passionate life or career, but not actually think about it or try to define it that way. But then there are those of us that really look at it as, I'm a multi-passionate.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your feedback on that though.
Of course I have that. Well, yeah, my first thought on that is that so I used to run, before you came on board with One Woman Shop, I used to run the Multi-Passionate Muse interview series. And so we'll also link to that in the show notes, but we had some really interesting interviews with different people who had described themselves as multi-passionate. So Sarah Von Bargen, Jess Lively, Jacqueline Mullen, so some really interesting women. And one of the things that kept coming up was, I have always been multi-passionate, but it wasn't until I knew there was a term for it that I felt really, truly comfortable embracing it. And so I think that sometimes a title limits you, but I think sometimes a title can open you up and be like, I think, not to make it too serious, but it's like a mental health diagnosis. Like you might feel one way, but then suddenly you have a diagnosis and you're like, okay, now this explains how I've always felt. So yeah, I think there can be obviously pros and cons, but I think that that's a huge pro in terms of having a label. And then I always think of Big Magic, our mandatory mention of Big Magic, where she talks about how so much of her things, so many of her books have come from just being curious. So we've talked a lot on Blab about curiosity. But I think it's really just the term encourages you to explore your curiosity. So.
Yeah.
Can I make one final point?
Completely stole my whole thing about the beauty of multi-passionate.
Shoot.
But that's okay. So I'll just be repeating Christina later.
Well, no, I was just going to add in that I think you said, it's like being a human, right? So I think that also in this day and age of technology, it's even easier to be multi-passionate because you have all these resources. So I think we've talked about this on another Blab. It's like after we watch The Good Wife, you just want to go and Google about the legal system. And that doesn't necessarily make you passionate about the legal system, but a little bit you're like, Law and Order, The Good Wife, now I'm an expert in the legal system. So I think that having all these resources and tools right at our fingertips enables multi-passion.
Absolutely. And so that actually leads into, we can talk a little bit more. Yeah, let's go first in kind of your background and how you would identify with being multi-passionate.
Sure. So, Sarah's always like, you did that? You did that? Wait, how do I not know this? So I guess I feel like I have always been multi-passionate, just didn't have a term for it. In college, I did a lot of stuff with social enterprise. I was really interested in social enterprise. And I started a random food business because I loved cooking. And then I was always doing like knitting when I was younger, and just kind of a bunch of different interests, and some that I did try to channel into businesses, and some that were just more hobbies and fun. But how about you?
Yeah, no, I'm always amazed. Christina surprises me all the time with, wait, you did what? Where were you? Where did you live? For me, I think it's always been kind of a natural way of living, because even when I was little, I was interested in a billion different things. And when I got to college, I ended up switching my major a couple times, and we've talked about that before too. But my friends joke that I was in a create your own major program at my undergrad school of RIT, because I graduated from what was the Center for Multidisciplinary Studies, but is now the School of Individualized Study, which is basically being able to blend several majors for people that don't want to choose or can't choose. So for me, I took film and animation, I took Italian, and I took PR and marketing, and I put them all in one bucket, and I graduated. And so that has always been kind of my nature, just in everything that I do. And then I always laugh when I look at like my bookshelf or my Spotify playlists. Everything is all over the board, but I love it that way. So.
We have some good Spotify playlists too. Yes. I know. I like we crowdsource our Spotify playlist, and they're like rap to Adele to Frank Sinatra. They're pretty random.
Oh yeah, it's good stuff though.
Yeah. Okay, so I am curious about some of your tips because we both, I think, in our personal lives and with other people who describe themselves as multi-passionates, we see some limitations. So actually, do you want to talk about first about those limitations that you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so a lot of them will lead right into my tips, but I think the first limitation is using, and this is actually, I think, what Rebecca Tracy talks about in her post about how she thinks being multi-passionate is bullshit, is using it as an excuse. So letting it limit you in terms of progress and moving forward on anything, and having it be this crutch that you lean on to say, well, I can't choose because I have so many passions. So there's the limitation of it being a certain mental state where it actually holds you back.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, I'll add a limitation. So one thing that came up in our interview for Multi-Passionate Muse back in the day was, I'll bring in a quote from Jacqueline Mullen. She says, in general, I see a lot of multi-potentialites, which is another term. Multi-potentialite people give up way too soon. You can be multi-passionate, but you also have to be a multi-commitmentite. And I loved that, that so many people use it, again, as you said, as a crutch, but use it as a crutch to kind of be flaky and irresponsible, which, as we know, doesn't really build you the best reputation, especially in like a small online world like the one we're in.
Yeah, much smaller than anybody ever thinks.
Yeah, cross paths with the same people over and over.
Yeah, and pulling from another of the quotes from the Multi-Passionate Muse series, I think it's Jess Lively, who said basically that it's a fast track to burnout if you're trying to explore everything at once. And we can get into that again more in our tips for how to manage it effectively. But yeah, absolutely trying to go after way too many things at once just to kind of feed your passions is certainly a quick way to just exhaust yourself.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Yeah, I feel like our limitations and our tips are super connected, but another limitation we see is that I think in this age of entrepreneurship, which we obviously support, we see a lot of people wanting to turn every single thing that they do into a business. Like, I enjoy crafting once a month, so therefore I'm going to make a craft business. And so just knowing that those options are out there and that in a lot of ways there are low barriers to entry. And, you know, I started a random cooking business, but it doesn't always have to be. You don't always have to turn that into a business. For example, not that I regret the cooking business, but I could have volunteered in a soup kitchen and not tried to turn it into a business. So that could have been another.
Yeah. So should we jump a little bit more directly into tips, and we'll obviously keep touching on limitations.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to go into my number one tip?
Yeah. So Christina introduced it, and that is basically that you don't. It's actually really funny because Christina and I will take notes for these blabs beforehand, but we'll do it separately. And so her notes are in there first. I didn't even look at them. I wrote my notes, and then I look and I'm like, oh, yes, we're usually right on track with each other. But I think your wording was it doesn't have to be a business. Mm-hmm. Not everything has to become a business. And I wrote not everything has to be a moneymaker or a career. So another big magic reference here really is when you put a lot of pressure on something, you take all the fun out of it. Mm-hmm. And so recognizing that some of your passions are just passions, hobbies, things that you'll pick up and put down as life goes on, explore for 10 minutes and then maybe not have interest in again. That is okay. Not everything has to turn into a full-blown career. Yeah. And I think that's really, really important to realize because it takes a little bit of pressure off how you can use all of your passions.
So can you tell a little bit about your tip about not doing it just because you're exploring it right now? Yeah.
So I think, so I actually read this in an article and I wish I could remember where, but basically just this idea of having that feeling that if I'm exploring something right now, it doesn't mean that you have to do it forever. And it doesn't mean that you have to ignore everything else forever. It's okay. Just like you said with the example of you're watching Good Wife and you're really curious about something legalese. So you get off and you just look it up and you kind of dig into it. You're not suddenly going to create a career off of that or spend the next week writing about it. It's literally just a rabbit hole you want to go down now. And it doesn't mean that everything else has to be put on hold.
I'm just going to leave One Woman Shop next week and be like, I decided to become a lawyer. Yeah, I'm actually Alicia. So I love that you said that. And I added a comment in our document and I said, quote, you don't have to put a ring on it. So I'll give you the little background on that. So I was talking to my boyfriend at the time and I was like, I love working with Habitat. Like I love going out. I love their mission and I actually love doing the work. So, but I hadn't done it in a while. And he was like, just because you're not doing it, he's like, you don't have to put a ring on Habitat. Like you don't have to lock it down and spend every day with it. And you don't have to commit to it. You can come back to it. And, you know, in 3 years, maybe I'm going to want to go back and, I don't know, work for Habitat or, you know, whatever, volunteer with Habitat. So I just like that. Just remembering you don't have to put a ring on all your interests.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, especially when it's stuff that like volunteering or things that right now don't fit into your priorities because you have to be doing something else. Right. It's a good feeling to know that just because you're not doing it right now doesn't mean you'll never do it again.
Yes. And to bring this back to business, and we've talked about this in a bunch of different ways, shapes, and forms, but we just wrote a post in relation to our Solopreneur Sanity Handbook about how we took old content and my old content I created and a bunch of your ideas, and we created the Solopreneur Sanity Handbook. We had to plug the Solopreneur Sanity Handbook because we do in every single blab ever. But the point being that we wrote a post about it and we talked about how you can revamp your content. And sometimes part of that revamping process is actually putting it on the bookshelf for a while and not the virtual bookshelf and not looking at it and not worrying about the fact that you're not doing anything with it. So you can put some of your interests, you can put some of your content, you can put that stuff on hold and come back to it later. We're giving you permission.
Yes, absolutely. Do you have a tip that you want to jump into? I kind of usurped that one.
Let's see. So I think you alluded to this as well in some of your notes, but I'll pull in another quote from the Multi-Passionate Muse, which is a really good series. This is from Stephanie Zamora, and she said, I found that uncovering your overarching theme or the big why behind everything that you love helps create some form of focus for us multi-passionistas. Another buzzword, another term for you. And so I really like that idea. And so when I was running my own business, I spent a lot of time. I didn't necessarily come up with an overarching theme, but I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And so, yeah, I think hers, she mentioned like hers is giving back or helping, helping business owners, something like that. But does that resonate with you?
Absolutely, because I think I help a lot of people with content strategy, and it's a lot of people, including myself, who struggle because they want to talk about a lot of different things. Yeah. For example, on their blog. And there's nothing wrong with not falling into a niche. And I preach that a lot, but it is also really puzzling sometimes to figure out how all these different things can come together. Yeah. But having that, I always call it the umbrella that everything can sit under, is so unifying for all of your topics. Yeah. Nothing has to tie together so cohesively that it all sounds the same. Everything can come under a very certain theme, and people will be able to, it gives people a much more well-rounded view of you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so we have some examples. I think our umbrella is obviously empowering female solopreneurs. And so it's really fun for us because lately we've been getting into a lot of, workout posts. We've been talking about food. We've been talking about cooking. And so it's like, you could say it's a stretch to tie best recipes into solopreneurship, but at the same time, like, we are looking at solopreneurs as whole human beings who need to eat and probably should be eating healthy because it gives you more energy, and probably want to be working out. And so, these topics have come up in context with our coaching client. She mentioned that she wanted quick at-home workouts, so we crowdsourced some answers for her. Show notes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really important too that One Woman Shop is a perfect example of catering to a very specific niche, but to a ton of things under that niche. Mm-hmm. So in the same month we're talking about sales tax, we're talking about at-home workouts. It's perfect, but we tie it together because it's all coming from One Woman Shop, from a certain voice talking to a specific audience.
Yeah. And now I'm going to plug your blog because just so everyone knows, I absolutely love reading Sarah's blog. Every time I die laughing. So you wrote a post around Halloween about your husband, Pete, and how Pete was really sad because there wasn't a lot of trick-or-treaters. And maybe you can summarize the blog post, but I love that you took a personal life example and then you tied it back to your business. And so I think that that's a way that multi-passionates can really effectively channel their work into a blog, is taking these life realizations, but tying them back to a common theme.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that whole post was it was making it epic for the people that show up. We bought a house 2 years ago, and Pete was all excited to have trick-or-treaters, and yet only the first year one kid showed up, and Pete wasn't even here for it because he went to pick up the pizza. So he made a note that, hey, if we get 2 trick-or-treaters, we'll double our audience next year. And he looks at it with such this optimistic viewpoint. And then I was having a conversation actually with my business coach who just joined our lab about my readers of my blog, and why don't I take that same approach to readers of my blog? Well, if I had 1 reader yesterday, I have 2 today, I've doubled my audience. And so that's kind of where that post came from. But the whole looking at your platform, your brand as you being a storyteller is a really effective way to pull in multi-passions. You can pull in so many different things by telling stories. So that's a really great point, Christina.
I have this post, and I think it's totally outdated now, but it was sitting in my drafts for ever, where I was very passionate. I would say one of my biggest passions was Candy Crush. And so if we're judging our passions based on amount of time invested, definitely probably number 1 passion, maybe below sleep. And so I was there's a lesson in this for business owners. And it was about,
there must be.
I don't even remember, but I had all these strategies and the ways that it ties back to being a business owner. So I just think it's just fun. You can use all these random examples that you're coming across in your life. And as a multi-passionate, you're probably going to be exposed to a lot of different things. So you're going to have great.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the first tip I actually wrote down before even the making it a business is, don't try to keep everything in separate silos. See how you can blend stuff, because and again, going back to not everything has to be its own business idea or moneymaker. It can be an influence for something you're already doing. Mm-hmm. But for my example, when I first started working with you on One Woman Shop, I kept One Woman Shop in my own business very, very separate. In fact, most people that I worked with in my own business, from my accountability partners in my masterclass to my clients, nobody knew that I was part of One Woman Shop for a very long time. And I think that was actually to my detriment, because I wasn't letting the 2 things influence each other. And now that I do, I feel like the 2 things run very much more smoothly. That was not good English. But they run much more smoothly because I let them feed off of each other.
I can't not say it.
I know.
No matter your political leanings, it is hilarious. If you saw the Trump video where he goes, I know words. I have the best words. And I've been losing it for 24 hours about this. I cannot stop quoting it. So I emailed Sarah.
No, every time I lose my words, it's going to just be terrible.
I emailed Sarah and I was she's I can explain this thing to you financially. And I was oh, I don't need you to explain it. I'm highly educated. I know numbers. I have the best numbers.
The best numbers. Yes. Coach Jenny says words was his best word. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the words.
Yeah. Hashtag all of the words. But yes. So I also wanted to say I don't think it's contradicting your last point about bringing it all together. But I think that one thing multi-passionates worry about is, okay, well, I'm this person to this person. So to this person, I am a recruiter. And to this person, I am half of One Woman Shop. And those things, I don't have to tell my recruiting clients, listen, I also am running a community for women business owners. It might be interesting to them and I might get good contacts, whatever. But it doesn't mean that I can't coexist in both things at the same time. I used to write a lot about like personal branding and personal positioning. And so I guess my takeaway here is know who you're talking to and know the biggest takeaway that you want them to have. So if I'm talking to someone who manages the HR department at a corporation, probably not going to start with one woman shop. I'll probably start with my recruiting background. So you can kind of pick and choose the parts of yourself that you're talking about. And I don't think that that's dishonest by any means. But
absolutely. No. I completely agree. Completely.
We always do. So can you talk a little bit about make time? Because I know that this is a huge thing for you as you were working full time and starting your business.
Yeah. So I kind of let myself, I kind of beat myself up a little bit if I let any of my passions sit too long without touching them. So whether it's playing my guitar or like free writing in a journal, reading, riding my bike, like anything that I'm really into. And it wasn't, I think it wasn't until I've been doing a lot of business reading lately that I have a constant reminder that if you don't make time for these things, nobody's going to make the time for you. So if I play my guitar for 15 minutes a week, I know I'll be so much happier than with zero time, but I have to make the time to do that. So the example you gave of when I was working full time, I would get up at 5 a.m. and work for a few hours before I went to my full-time job, before I went to the other work. And then I would use my nights and weekends as needed to get my stuff done. And it was about making the time to make it happen. Knowing, and this is the perfect example of knowing that at that time that was the priority and other things were going to have to drop, but it didn't mean I was never going to go back to those things. So all of the tips here, they just kind of come together full circle.
Yes. So make the time, but if you're not making the time, maybe that's okay. I feel like everything we say, we're like, but on the flip side, it's okay too. I think that my example is I used to blog, and as Sarah knows, we just laid to rest both my defunct blogs. So sad. But around the same time that I shut them down, I was like, you know what? I really loved blogging, and I really miss blogging, and I haven't done it for like 2 years, and I haven't done it actually since the last blog post I wrote was about my 3-month trip to Central America. And just in case you're not familiar, it's now been 1.5 years. It's still here. So it's been a long time since I blogged. But I've just been thinking like, wow, I just feel lately like I have a lot of stuff that I want to write. And so now I'm thinking of starting a blog back up. And so I could be devastated over the fact that I haven't blogged in the last 1.5 years. And I probably missed out on some awesome content. Or I can just be excited that now I can blog.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I feel like we can have an entire conversation just on content when it comes to being a multi-passionate. But let's get back to creating kind of a business around being multi-passionate. Okay. So what would you say is the biggest – we talked about limitations, and you touched upon what's really great about being multi-passionate. But I'm wondering if you have any other reasons that you really feel being multi-passionate is important.
I would say I would like to hear from you.
Yeah, so the thing I wrote down, and you did touch on it earlier, was that for me, I relate being multi-passionate to being curious and staying curious. And that was that mandatory Big Magic reference. But really, to me, it's exploring the things that make you curious and that you want to know more about, and never letting yourself be bored. Boredom is kind of like this elusive thing to me because I can't really give you a time I've felt bored, but it's about not being bored, keeping an open mind, and exploring the things that make you curious. And whether or not you embody that in your business, I think it's just super important to have that attitude towards life.
Okay, so I think you're a naturally curious person. My mom has always been like, you're very curious. That's not an issue. How would you say, and I feel like we should probably do another blab, we should probably make note of this on curiosity, but how would you say if you don't feel like you're a naturally curious person, how would you foster that? Now I'm totally getting off topic. the answer.
No, that's a great question. And something where if you ask me again tomorrow, I'll probably have a better answer. But
you can save it for the blog.
the first thing that comes to mind is, as you go through your day, write down anything that you're wondering about. Because I think that we have so many thoughts that we just ignore because we don't necessarily need to do anything with them. But I can't tell you how many times I've sent an email and been like, oh, I really wish I knew the answer to this question before I sent that. Or I get a random outreach from somebody and I want to know more about their business, but I don't necessarily do it at that moment. Kind of take note of the things that you feel curious about or that you wonder about, ask questions about, and then don't be afraid to explore them and see what's still piquing your interest later.
I like it. So this actually ties into a tip that I have. And so I think that something about multi-passionates and people, we are also people. We're people too. Multi-passionate slogan. Anyway, so I think a lot of times business owners decide, I'm going to start a business. And they're like, what should I do? And instead of going in backwards and saying, I see a need, they're trying to create a need. And so I think some people have built pretty successful businesses off making a need. But at the same time, I think that one tip I've heard is spend a week writing down any issue you have or any issue that you see other people complaining about. And it kind of gets your wheels turning. I think it gets you your wheels turning in terms of curiosity, but also in terms of starting a business. And make sure that you're actually meeting a need instead of just throwing yourself into anything.
Yeah, no, that's we're going to link in the resources to a pretty old, by relative standards, Reforlio Q&A Tuesday, where she talks about whether you should explore several passions when you're creating your online business. And I believe I watched it like way back when I was starting to freelance, but I rewatched it today. And her advice is really to hone in on one thing to start, knowing that you can always explore the other things, but to really hone in on one thing to start to discover what it is you like about it and let that lead into other things. So I think that goes with your advice of kind of digging into one thing for even if it's a week, but in business, finding one thing to focus on first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, and so another tip, so something that came up in a lot of the Multi-Passionate Muse interviews, and Sarah actually wrote a great post, which we'll link in the show notes, about batching. So one thing that kept coming up was just because you're multi-passionate doesn't mean that you get to sit down every single day and be like, oh, what should I work on? I don't know. I'll work on this. I'll work on this. I'll work on that. And so the need to have a routine or some semblance of structure came up a lot. And so having maybe batching days where you say, maybe you are running two completely different businesses and you say, today I work on this business and tomorrow I work on that business. Or you and I are both working on two separate projects. And so, mornings are for client work and afternoons are for one woman shop. So any other advice about creating a schedule around being a multi-passionate?
Well, like basically setting a routine with anything, knowing that it's flexible and it'll change as you introduce new things. But I think the entire thing we want to get across with being a multi-passionate is not putting so much pressure on being a multi-passionate.
Yeah.
And enjoying things for what they are. This would be a great time, though, if anybody that's out there in the live seats wants to chime in with your tips for effectively running a multi-passionate business or embracing being multi-passionate in your life. We'd love to hear it. Jenny says, I also love working on certain things in different places, like writing my book at the lake. I love that.
I like it. Finding basically different atmospheres for your different projects and kind of making yourself aware that that's the place you work on that project. So I like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Whew. Also, we're open to questions. We should have said that probably from the beginning. But yeah, we'll be sharing resources and notes over on our blog, Post Blab. We absolutely love talking about this stuff, obviously.
Yes, and we have some good book suggestions and some posts. I think we both really like posts that are kind of contrarian, so I think that's why we like Rebecca Tracy's post. We like people who challenge our perspectives.
Yeah. Christina, go ahead.
Yeah, so we got a question. Is there such a thing as being too multi-passionate to the point that it's hard to run a profitable business? I would say yes and no. I would say you can be 1,000,000,000% multi-passionate in your thoughts, but in your actions, I would say that's where it's important to hone in and really focus. And so I guess my advice would be probably doing some goal setting around. So say you have one business, but you have a bunch of different service offerings. Doing some goal setting. So one example is we just did a revenue breakdown. How much of our revenue in 2016 and 2017 we want to come from each of our service offerings. And so that can guide our thinking around how much effort we're putting into each product. And now if we find we're just kind of spinning our wheels in every single different offering and we're not actually making any income through any of the offerings because we're so divided, that's where I think we would reassess. So that's a start to your question. Sarah.
Yeah. I think that it can be detrimental to building a profitable business if you let it. So very much what Christina said in terms of aligning your actions. And that's actually where Marie Forleo started in that episode of, you have a lot of people that will say, I just need to sit and think about this and figure it out in my head, get clarity in my head. Well, you're not going to in her words, you're not going to figure it out by thinking about it. You're going to figure it out by acting. So if you let that multi-passionate nature be a crutch for not taking action, that's when I think that it makes it hard to run a profitable business. So kind of repeating stuff that we said earlier, but action.
Sorry, what was that?
No, I was just going to say action is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that we are both very strong advocates of exploration. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer, which sucks. But you always tell our coaching clients, we're like, we don't actually have an actual answer for you. So you're going to have to figure this one out. But there's exploration, and then now you're just avoiding doing the work because you're, like Sarah said, you're spending so much time thinking. And so it's finding that fine line.
Yeah. And another great word for exploration is experimentation. And this is something that I've been working on in my business. And it takes a lot of pressure off of really taking anything and taking it too far, but having parameters around what you're experimenting with. You can take anything and run a day-long experiment, a week-long experiment. And when you view it as an experiment, it kind of takes the pressure off. It removes some of the doubt, the fear of failure. So I really like those words, exploration and experimentation, for especially for your multi-passions.
Yeah. Well, and I think tying back to the idea of the common theme, something that we talk a lot about with our coaching clients is your business is made up of this toolkit of strategies. And it all is feeding your mission statement. So maybe we'll say within your business, it's your business mission statement, or within your life, it's your life mission statement if you have one. And if not, there you go. Challenge. Go make a life mission statement.
Homework.
Yeah, homework. So you say, okay, so Sarah and I are working on the Road to Solopreneur Success ebook. Does this ebook tie into our mission of giving knowledge and support to women business owners? And does it also contribute to our funnel that funnels into membership? Yes. All right. Great project to work on. And so that's a project that could, take a few days. And then we say the Solopreneur Sanity Handbook is a multiple month project. Does that feed into our mission? Yes. Okay. We can also do that. So I think that's kind of how you can justify these different projects.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like having that overarching theme, that overarching mission. And we've seen it drive so many projects for our coaching clients where they didn't feel like they had a focus or a direction before. So that's fantastic advice.
Yeah. Life is a toolkit made up of strategies.
All right. Well, I think we could keep going all day, but we might as well cut ourselves off here.
Cut it off. So next week we will be back on the hot seat talking about outsourcing.
Yes, it is outsourcing month at One Woman Shop, so we'll be blogging about it and having a few different guest posts going up on different outsourcing techniques and tips and tricks and why and when. So if you've had experiences with outsourcing or have been thinking about it, we'd love for you to join us next week, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on Blab.
Good work. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.